F1's worst driver. The story of Yuji Ide has become well known in the motoring world, and if you're ever talking about some of the worst drivers in F1 history, chances are his name will be one that's always brought up somewhere. But the fact of the matter is, Ide wasn't just done with motorsport after his infamous F1 ban. So whatever happened to F1's worst ever driver? Before we do look at what happened in Ide's later career, let's quickly recap the events that happened that led up to Ide's Formula 1 ban. In 2006, former Japanese F1 driver Aguri Suzuki was set to launch his brand new F1 team into the sport under the name Super Aguri. The team would rock an all-Japanese driver lineup, with experienced F1 driver Takuma Sato taking up the first seat and 31-year-old rookie who was friends with Aguri Suzuki, Yuji Ide, taking the second seat, also making him one of the oldest rookies in modern Formula 1. Ide didn't exactly have all of the odds in his favor during his F1 start. To begin with, he was driving for by far the worst team on the grid that year, a team notably incapable of scoring points. He was also going to be well and truly driving the second car of the two, with Sato getting the priority on parts and upgrades. He had done extremely limited Formula 1 testing, and his English was also very limited. To be completely honest, I'm not sure if Ide was entirely sure what was going on. So round one in Bahrain went about as expected for the driver. He qualified at the back of the grid, 3 seconds off his teammate, and would then retire on lap 35 of the race. The next round in Malaysia, Ide's qualifying deficit fell to just under 2 seconds of teammate Sato, but despite this improvement in qualifying pace, he would still only complete 33 laps of the Grand Prix before his eventual retirement. Round 3 in Melbourne was actually probably Ide's warning to us about Mazepin to come in the future, because Yuji just suffered from a series of spins the entire weekend. But at least this time, he actually managed to finish a Formula 1 race. It was in 13th, and he was last of the running cars and 2 laps down. But hey, a finish was a finish. 16! And then round 4, unknown to Ide at the time, would actually be the last Formula 1 race of his career. He qualified at his favorite grid spot, last, and into the first couple corners, Ide plowed into Christian Albers on the race start, causing an absolutely massive crash and Christian Albers to flip numerous times in a move that would prove to be hugely detrimental to the rest of Ide's career. After another 23 laps of what I can only assume were pain for Yuji Ide, he DNF'd from the race and was called to the FIA stewards for a bit of a conversation. I can imagine it went something like this.
Yuji, why did you cause a crash? Do you know how to drive en F1 car? Do you know you're meant to finish the race?
Anyway, the stewards recommended that he go get some more driving experience before he ever returned to F1, and they stripped him of his super license, essentially banning him from the sport. So what did Yuji do next? Well, given he was still friends with Aguri Suzuki, the Super Aguri team looked to get him a little bit more experience, before in their minds ideally getting their F1 driver back into F1. And let's just say things would continue to go silly for Ide. He'd first go back to compete the last 6 rounds of Formula Nippon, what we now know as Super Formula, in 2006, a series he'd finished second in just a year before. If we look at his racing record though, I think we can spot the reason as to why he never got another chance in Formula 1. Between his exit of F1 and 2016, while continuing to race almost exclusively Japanese series, Ide would only see 1 race victory in 10 years, which he took at the 2010 Super GT race, surprisingly in Suzuka. You'll see why later on. And still with the Super Aguri team. Well, their Super GT equivalent. At this point though, Super Aguri had already resigned from F1, as they were never really able to make their progress forward. However, I suppose Aguri Suzuki still had some faith in the man. Maybe he was right to, because in 2017, things seemed to take a real turn for Yuji Ide. He would score 4 wins in the South Korean Korean Super Race Championship, a touring car series in which he actually finished second in for the first time since the 2005 Formula Nippon series with his team Exeter Racing. So, while yes, Formula One drivers do tend to aim a bit higher than localized touring car championships, for Ide, I suppose it was a good result to help him get some confidence back. And from there, things actually did begin looking up for Yuji Ide. In 2020, for the first time since 1999, when he competed in Formula Dream, Yuji Ide actually managed to win a championship with his team, this time winning the Japanese Super Taikyu Series, an endurance racing championship that even included a 24-hour race, where he competed in the TCR category, so again, touring cars, driving a Honda Civic Type R. And he was seemingly enjoying racing these kinds of cars and was actually apparently quite good at it too. His team took the win in round 2 and round 4 of the series and managed to finish second in the 24-hour opener race and took second in round 4, only retiring once in the 5th and final round of the championship, but was still enough to come first in class by just 1.5 points. And in 2021 again, Ide decided to race in the Super Taikyu Endurance Series, but this time would face a new challenge and was placed in the fastest STX category of cars. This time he was driving a McLaren 720S GT3, quite a bit of a step up from the Honda Civic Type R. And again, Ide and his team performed really well. Over the 5-round season, they took 4 podiums, and one of those was even a win, which was during the 5 hours of Autopolis, and that gave them overall second in the championship. Sadly though, for 2023 and 2024, it doesn't seem that Yuji Ide has continued racing in the Super Taikyu series, despite his obvious success there. In fact, the actual last entry into any race I could see for Ide was in 2022, which was 3 races for Super GT. And I did try researching further than just looking at his Wikipedia stats, but honestly, nothing came up with his name in it. It does make sense though, at 49 and as a racing driver, he's probably heading towards the end of his racing career. There is, however, one story I have left to tell you that has honestly got to be the funniest one I could find. It actually takes place during the year he got banned from F1, while Aguri Suzuki was trying to get him more experience to put him back into an F1 car. And it probably perfectly highlights why he wasn't the right driver for the job. Ide would race for the Nismo team in 2006 Super GT during the 1,000 kilometers of Suzuka. And things got very silly, and you might see why I was surprised to see he won a race there. Early in the race, Ide made contact with the number 55 car, and for that was given a drive-through penalty. The notice for this penalty was held up on a pit board as he crossed the start-finish straight, but as he went past it, he ignored it.
I don't think he's coming in there. No, he's gone by.
So the next time round, understandably, he was shown the black flag.
Oh, now that's changed.
Black flag, yeah, that's more of a problem.
Meaning he was completely disqualified, and again, which he completely ignored.
Is he he's going again?
I don't believe this.
So the next time round, his team held out a board telling him to pit for a penalty.
His team.
Well, now that's the first time we've seen them do that. They may have been doing that earlier.
And instead of coming into the pit lane, he just served the drive-through penalty and went back out onto the racetrack.
I think he's driven past his team. He's done the
drive-through, no.
Eventually, on a 4th time of asking, he realized he was disqualified and pulled into the pits.
Take the walk of shame.
The whole thing is just absolutely hilarious. Honestly, after hearing the whole story of Yuji Ide, what more did you expect from him? The only question I have left was, why was he like this, and how did he all of a sudden have a turnaround at the end of his career? If you actually look back to before Formula One, Ide had plenty of experience in open wheelers, enough to at least warrant some awareness from his end. In 2001, there was a 5th place in the Macau Grand Prix, a grueling street circuit that is a test for any racing driver and used chooses Formula 3 cars. He saw reasonable success in the Formula Nippon series in 2004 and 2005, yet he still somehow seemed to struggle with the very basics of Formula 1. And it honestly probably does come down to more than just poor driving. I think his lack of understanding of English probably plays a bigger part than we're willing to accept. He would have felt quite out of place within the sport, as well as Aguri Suzuki making comments about potentially dropping him if his performance didn't improve. This would all have added a lot of pressure on Yuji to perform well. And maybe it was a combination of all this pressure and, quite frankly, the worst F1 car on the grid that led to Ide just making silly mistakes. It's probably why once he took a break in 2016, and as far as I can tell didn't do any racing for that year, when he came back and was racing in Japan and Korea, he saw a lot more success. I think that's what took a bit of pressure off him. He realized he wasn't getting back into F1, he could just relax a little bit, and he'd had a year out to mentally prepare. And maybe just coming back in that healthier mindset is what gave him that late career success. You've got to admit, being known as the worst F1 driver ever is going to play its mental toll on you as a racing driver. If you did enjoy this deep dive into Yuji's career, please consider subscribing. I'm definitely a lot happier that he's done better towards the end of his career and could maybe leave it on a good note. Thank you massively to my channel members. Big up Skibbity United. Goodbye.